All right, we're all ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to call our Finance and Audit meeting for August 8th to order at 8:30 a.m. We are missing Brian and Terry, and Kelly is calling in. So I'll entertain a motion to allow Kelly to attend remotely. Teresa moves, Carolyn seconds. Any concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Kelly, welcome.
Thank you.
We have minutes for approval, item number 2. I'll entertain a motion to approve. Teresa.
Second.
Larry seconds. Any questions or concerns? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Public comments?
Last call, public comment? Your list is empty, sir.
Beautiful. I mean, not beautiful, but I mean, yeah, great. Member comments? Teresa.
So in light of the report we just got on the Workforce Network group at our COW last month, I think that our committee should, at least personally, if not public, not meeting-wise, think about whether or not we're going to have to put into place some sort of grant like we have for the Senior Service Grant Commission. It might not be a this year thing, but I can see that coming down the line. So like a similar county, which maybe is DuPage, I'm trying to remember which one it was, it's a $5 million set aside.
DuPage.
Oh, DuPage, thank you. And so we might see that coming down our future. So I thought, oh, I should mention this at finance. I said I was going to mention it in finance at the COW, and so here I have mentioned it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyone else? No? The only comment I have is, in light of the state's attorney opinion that we all received and the conversation we had at the committee of the whole, I would ask our committee members that when you are not able to be here and you would like a call-in, that you simply cite the 3 options that you have, 1, 2, or 3. I don't feel like personally policing you. You're all adults, and you can just spell out which of the 3 you are not able to attend the meeting and asking for a call-in. Okay? Routine consent agenda, items that members would like removed. Anything? All right. If not, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the routine consent agenda, items 6.1 through 6.13, sorry. Teresa and Carolyn. We'll go to vote then. Kelly?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
And myself? Yes. Motion carries. I'm sorry y'all came for that. That was, you know.
Wow.
You can stick around for budget discussions if you like, though. New business. Okay, 7.1 is the this resolution approving a successor agreement between the County of McHenry and McHenry County Economic Development Corporation. Scott.
I'll tee this up. The agreement with the county and MCEDC expires on November 30th. What you have before you is a 4-year successor agreement to continue that public-private partnership. In essence, MCEDC is contracted by the county to really perform economic development functions. The purpose of that is allows their team, their staff, their expertise to be on the street, to be meeting with potential businesses, meeting with current businesses to see what the county can do to help retain. So they actually serve as the county's economic development arm in that respect. The benefit for the county is it doesn't require the county to maintain an economic development staff, although the county administrator in my position do contribute to the economic development efforts, so there is certainly some involvement with the county staff into economic development. This agreement continues that public-private partnership. It's a model that we've had in place for many, many years, and it has worked, in our opinion, very well for the county. This will continue for 4 years. What you see in this agreement, though, the only major change is it reflects the amendment that the county board adopted in May to, in essence, provide benefits for the MCEDC staff. So basically, there would be health insurance, IMRF, things like that. Basically, brings them onto the county's payroll. The county would administer the payroll for them. They would get the benefits that the county provides, but that's charged to MCEDC. And the way it works is rather than the county submitting a quarterly contribution or quarterly amount, which in the previous contract was $40,000 per quarter, $160,000 per year, rather than submitting that money, everything would be trued up after the end of the quarter, and if there's amount owed, there's a bill sent to MCEDC for the amount for the payroll and for the benefits, so they're paying their full way. The county's not paying for that. And if there's anything left over, then that would be remitted to MCEDC. So that is incorporated into this 4-year agreement to continue it, and as you'll see, the resolution is blank on the amount of the contribution. As I mentioned in the past, it was $160,000 for the previous 4 years. That is left to be blank with the intent that this committee would have a discussion as to what the appropriate amount would be. If you were in a position to determine an appropriate amount, make a recommendation to the county board, you can simply amend this resolution on the floor today, and it can go to the county board. If you want to deliberate further, you have obviously next month to do it. But keep in mind that I would recommend next month we have that number because I need to develop the economic development budget, which is where this fee comes from. So with that, I'll turn it over to the floor.
And Mark, why don't you introduce yourself?
Good morning, I'm Mark Picos, newly minted Executive Director of McHenry County Economic Development Corporation. I've been in the position since June 1st, and we've had a lot of incredible momentum developing. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm feeling very comfortable and appreciative for all the support that I've been given from the county as well as our peers. So thanks for having me.
So I had asked, we were talking and I had recommended that we leave the dollar amount blank because there's been a lot of discussion amongst our committee and amongst the board about is 160,000 a year the correct number? You know, in reference to what other counties are doing, 160,000 is very much on the low side compared to other counties and the public-private partnership that they formed to do the economic development. You know, I guess that number has actually gone down over the years. It used to be, I think, 166.
Correct.
And then in the Jack Frank's era, it went down to 160, and it stayed there since. And so with this new contract, you know, looking to see a discussion amongst the committee at least to make a recommendation to the full board. If we can, I'd like to pass this out of committee today, but and that's kind of how I left it on the agenda here, so that would be possible. But if board members feel like it's that's not able to happen, then I'm fine with that too. We can just postpone it till next month.
I want to just add and remind, as Scott said this already, we're paying for this out of an economic development fund. So these dollars right now are not yet competing with general fund dollars, but that ED fund will exhaust itself 26 or 27 if at this pace, right? So we are in the future we're going to have to start putting money back into the economic development fund. But for now, as we build the budget for 25, there is enough money to really do whatever you want.
So how much is in the fund right now?
We're sitting at just a little over $1 million, so right around that. As Pete mentioned, we do an analysis as we continue the obligations for this contract. Naturally, McHenry County also comes out of the Economic Development Fund, and looking at some of the other costs such as GSAP, R1 planning. Probably in fiscal year 2026, we would be kind of close to exhausting that this contract. I'm sorry, that fund. The recommendation would be if you want to continue focused money for economic development purposes, that the county board find a stream to help fund this, just like you did years ago with the capital fund. You found money to put in so we can keep the capital fund funded and projects going under there. So this will be a similar step. But this 2025 fiscal year, you still have enough money. You won't be in any challenges. It's the next fiscal year is what I would be concerned about. So my recommendation, though, is if you're going to start, maybe if you can do it, start this coming year, and then you can build that momentum with funding, having revenue stream for economic development.
Carrie's got that on the list.
Sure she does. something you said is a little confusing to me. You said the fund currently has $1 million in it, but if I'm looking at what, this is McHenry County, or McHenry County, whatever it's called now, naturally McHenry County, and looking at this, unless you're counting this as the whole contract, I'm trying to understand how you're gonna blow through $1 million in a year.
Well, we still have another payment coming out of this contract. So that $1 million is, it's every year is depleting. You think if you have 160,000 from here, 100,000 from next year, we roughly burn through, I'm gonna say about $250,000, maybe almost a little bit more, for all the obligations that the county has. And that's the MCEDC, NMC, R1 Planning Council, GSAP.
It's more than that.
It's
More than 300 when you put those together.
when you put those together, plus we also have the obligations for business incentives for 2 companies that were awarded in the past. There's an operating transfer out for some of the staff time that goes into economic development and administering. That's low end. So you're hitting around $300-some thousand.
If you 160 for MCDC, 100 for natural, 100 for, or 50 for GSEP, 50 for R1.
So
It's 30 for GSEP plus associated costs, so then you're over.
And 25% of his.
360, yes.
yeah, and then there's salary that's in there. Last year we put quarter of the deputy county administrator salary into it. So that's really set you $1 million is going to be pretty much burned through by next fiscal year. That's how we get to that.
You'll have enough for 2 more full years.
Yeah, you should have I'm just doing the math in my head. You should have enough for 2 years.
Right, about
About enough for 2
400
years.
Say about
At this pace.
400,000 per year. Yeah,
By 27, you're not gonna have enough to do a full year.
into
If everything else is static.
Go ahead, Larry.
The naturally McHenry County, when I'm looking at that contract, there's a blank too.
Yeah.
What kind of money is that typically?
currently it's $100,000 per year, and that was static over the 4 years.
And my other comment would be if we realize there's going to be a financial situation in 2 years, why would we have this contract for 4 years and not just make it for 2 years?
You can do that. It's what it does is it maintains that partnership. I mean, we don't see anything changing, but actually the way the contracts are written, they are in essence year to year with an automatic renewal, but you can't terminate. So it's basically, it starts off with 1 year and it just takes each year individually is the way the contract's written. So you can do that. If you wanted to shorten it to 2 years, that's something that you can do as well. It's just, we're just following suit with what we've done in previous contracts. They've typically been 4-year increments.
I'm not a fan of that. Automatic renewal if the financial situation is going to change in 2 years.
But can I just ask a question to follow up on that real quickly, because that topic, it's an automatic renewal, but you have the option to
Yeah,
it's set up so that it will automatically renew if you don't take action, but you can take action to end it.
that's correct.
But would we see it
Yeah.
Well, we would see it, sure.
or automatically renew without us seeing it?
No, we would know the time frame, so we could have it just make sure it gets put on the agenda so as for us to consider. Is there any reason not to allow it to move forward?
It's automatic, and sometimes it doesn't get here.
Because I know that that's a fairly typical, like, contract arrangement with.
Well, I guess, here's the thing.
I'm sorry, I just want to.
Automatic renewal, it doesn't come back before the board and on an automatic renewal. It just
Right.
automatically gets renewed. Now, if the funding stream, which is what I'm being told is gonna end in 2 years, come that 3rd year, it's gonna come back before us because there is no revenue stream for it anymore.
But you can actually put it on the agenda. We can say, this needs to go back on the agenda just so that we can review where we're at. And we decide we're not gonna take action, it just, and that continues on as if. I mean, there's no reason why we can't give our eyes on it in 11 months.
True,
And
but-
to say it will never come forward is actually not true. We can make sure it comes forward.
You have to remember though, and that's the problem, right? We have to remember, somebody has to remember that we wanna put it up.
Well, I'm sure if we say, please put this on the agenda.
Well, I mean, technically, it comes up in budget review, because when this is presented to us, I don't know when you're presenting it to us, but
So the economic development budget would be next month, and actually that would be my comment. So you do have a mechanism to deliberately say, we're going to continue this relationship, whether you review it against the contract or not, but it does get funded each year. So so there are, in essence, eyes on it. But if you wanted a more of a formal review, we'll be happy to do whatever the committee wants to do, whatever you're most comfortable with. If it's a simple discussion and consent or formal resolution, we'll do it, and we'll put it on the list and on a particular file, and yeah, whatever the committee wants to do. But it's just let us know.
Can I say something?
Hold on a second, Kelly. I'll call on you next. Terry?
In the administrative committee meeting yesterday, there was a discussion regarding lobbyists. And they were talking in the phrase, other counties are doing this, they have these things, they have too. And just looking at the population of even the Chicago metro area and then the budgets of those counties, we're 2/3 of the next county that's closest to us in size as far as population and budget. And so to just say, oh, other counties are doing more, that's not compelling necessarily. What would be interesting is to see actually in some type of what is a model for how economic development corporations are funded, because I've been a part of this for 20 years and know how it used to be run and what the purpose, and it was primarily private sector. I'm not a fan of seeing something that functioned so well in the past as a private sector entity become a public sector entity now with the whole pension and all of the things that go along with that. I don't think that's anybody's intent, is to continue to grow government entities, but what would be practical as a partnership. And so that we look at this in and of its own, not because everybody else is doing it, because I don't know how everybody else is doing it. I want to compete when we have a lobbyist situation, if there's something that, yes, that expenditure is going to bring in much more money to the county because it's there, in fact. So that's what I would want to see, and I agree with Larry, and with all due respect, Carolyn, it's not going to be the same board. The best laid plans, there's nothing that would ensure that it doesn't go on. And how many people have things on automatic payment, and we all do things, and then you find out, oh my gosh, I kept that thing going that I never meant to. So I think it needs more oversight for that, at least until we are in agreement on what it is that we're trying to achieve and how and what's best for this economy and this situation.
Okay. Kelly?
So we haven't talked about numbers yet. I am perfectly fine with leaving it at 160,000, maybe even adding a little more if we need to. But when it comes to the contract time, why don't we put in a 2-year contract with an option for renewal for 2 more years? That way it comes up again, we have the same amount, and it kind of alleviates the problem that we're having.
Well, I mean, in essence, it's a 1-year contract with 3 1-year renewals. So, I mean, it's kind of doing the same thing you're saying as far as that aspect of it.
Does it have to come up in front of us every year?
Well, that's what we're talking about. So Scott, as part of where this money's coming from, comes before this committee every year when it comes to budget discussions. So the contract specifically itself does not come before us, but through the budget review, and quite honestly, there isn't a heck of a lot in this. So, I mean, that budget presentation is, 1 sheet. I mean, there isn't a lot in that. Yes, Scott?
Yeah, I would just draw the committee's attention to Section 3 of the contract, which is entitled Time of Performance. And it really talks about it's a 1-year agreement. The county has the option to continue the agreement for additional 3 years based on performance of the corporation. It also has language in there that says if there's insufficient funds, the county can terminate without penalty. So that paragraph really captures everything that we're talking about. I think what's on the table, and if the committee wants to do that, we can bring a formal discussion to say, shall we continue it, yes or no? So you already have the language built in that covers everything that is being discussed. It's just do you want to take that deliberate step to have a yes or no on continuing, which we can do, whatever you want to do.
So there's one more thing. Scott, you had mentioned there's a couple other things coming out of that fund.
Yes.
R1 and what was the other one called?
GSEP, the Greater Chicago Economic Partnership.
Okay. I think it would be good for us to know what's our return on investment on those two payments, because we hear that we're part of them, but we really don't know if we're getting a return on our investment with that money.
How would you like to evaluate that?
Well, monetarily.
Well,
Are we getting new economic growth? Are we getting new visitors? Well, I guess that's naturally McHenry County, but I mean, how are we benefiting from investing, especially in the Chicago one?
Well,
my only comment to that is it's very difficult to monetize what those organizations are monetarily bringing to the county, because again, thought process on both of those organizations are their regional based economic development. And the thought process is supposed to be that, you know, economic development in, let's say, Kane County is also good for McHenry County, or, you know, wherever it is in the region. You know, if Winnebago County gets something, that's going to trickle into McHenry County. I don't know how you monetize that, except for saying, you know, that we're still building houses, we're you know, having economic development increasing, and I'm just trying to set expectations of what we could really bring that you would be able to look at and say, this is a number. I mean, both of those organizations have general numbers, you know, like, hey, you know, the region brought X, but I don't know how you split it up and say McHenry County specifically got X.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess we've just been invested in these two things and we really have not discussed them or had a report about them at the board, and I would just like to know more about it.
I'd be happy to talk with you offline, Kelly, and then maybe we could prepare some kind of a report. I've got several thoughts on both organizations and their value, and I'd be happy to engage on that.
Okay, thank you.
So I was on the board for 6 years and I ran the Workforce Development Committee, and I don't even know what the objectives are right now of MCEDC. I'm sure it's changed quite a bit in its structure, but there were measurables that were looked at, and it was such things as what are the opportunities for land that is zoned and could be developed, what are existing properties that are vacant or are going to become available, what type of inquiries. I was called upon individually many times to look at labor force and numbers, which really I pull them from the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, just the way the workforce development team does. And but all of these types of things and how many of those tours and investigations, and then also in some cases going out and looking in the region or even nationally at people who had would be a logical partner to have a location in this area, or logistics or whatever might be a good match. And they were very vibrant and very active, and we had reports. And so we can't control the outcomes of the decisions that are made, but knowing that we were giving just top-rate information and presentation to attract companies. And so there are measurables, and I know, Mark, you really excel at things like that. So I don't think it's necessarily hard to track on that. I think they might be in the rebuilding or reorganizing stages of that, but that certainly would be
Well, I think we can track what we're doing specifically, which is kind of what you're talking about.
Yes.
But the R1 and the GSEP is a little more muddled because it's a regional area versus just specifically our county. That's my only.
And that could be as simple as we need to be branded in these organizations and have a footprint. I don't know, but you could build a case for it. And then in that case, it's an expenditure for branding and networking. So I don't think it's necessary. I mean, everybody, when they're choosing how to spend their money, is looking at the objectives and what it brings to the organization.
Yeah, and specifically with the MCEDC contract and also the NMC contract, which we'll talk about next, there is defined scope of services and performance measures in there. So you can evaluate what MCEDC is doing. They have certain requirements that they need to do for the county. So specifically, going back to this contract, there are things that you can look at. If you want to look at every year to do a report or update of how they're performing against this scope of service, we certainly can do that. And that will give you the idea. When we get into the budget discussion, I think that might be the appropriate opportunity to talk about the other organizations. But I can tell you that MCEDC and NMC, it's pretty defined as to what we expect them to do for this payment.
Mark, did you want to add something?
Certainly, and just to add context, two examples of things that were a result of those partner organizations is one. In July, we had the visit from the BTEC consulate, Brazilian business owners, and that was completely facilitated by GSEP. Now, we won't see the lasting impact of that directly, right, unless we get a direct report from somebody who said, hey, I met this person at that delegation visit. We're now starting a business relationship or something to that effect. Simultaneously with Region 1, we are a participant in their ongoing community economic development study, and we won't directly see the outcomes of that for several years. So I do believe that these are valuable uses of our time and funds, and we can certainly establish metrics that would be valuable to the board to say, yeah, we are seeing some return on our investments.
I just want to, this discussion is super timely. Mark is scheduled to address the full board next Thursday at the Committee of the Whole, kind of introducing himself and new MCEDC. And Kyle Schultz, the Executive Director of the Greater Chicago Economic Partnership, is scheduled to address the Committee of the Whole in September. So we'll be able to talk a little bit about what we're getting for our $30,000 investment with GSEP.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Carolyn?
Well, I thought, because we were talking about the contract in terms of renewal and that sort of thing. I think the other thing to keep in mind is, I think it's my understanding, and having been through this with just different organizations, the 2-year contract, I think they're getting away from them, but that certainly is an option of doing the 2 and 2, I think Kelly mentioned that. The thing about just doing the automatic renewal is that you also don't have the expense of renewing it. I mean, if you open it up and you have to renegotiate it a year from now, you don't have that expense of, if you just allow for it to continue, you've saved on that expense, and it's all written out. You have the opportunity to cancel based on different things. So I honestly don't, I mean, they got pretty heavy into the weeds in contracts. I don't have a problem.
Okay.
We get these reports. Marcus knew things are going good. We see a good return on the investment. How do I know when we put a number in here for 4 years? How do I know in 2 years from now I'm not going to think, or they're not going to come and say, well, we need more money to do this or do that, so we can do more of whatever, that I wouldn't be willing to add money to it at that time. So I don't see the...
Where are you going to find the money from?
Mike, I just figured you'd be writing a check. Deep,
I did already.
and then they call you Deep Pockets Mike?
Yeah, all right. Deeper pockets.
And I'm not saying that there'd be more money, but I mean, if this has been, what's our number we're gonna pick today?
Right, yeah.
Because if it's been at 160 for ever how long, do we look at some type of inflation factor to pick a number? And 4 years from now, is that number gonna be relevant?
Well, I think one of the challenges that I think the MCEDC board has put on Mark is to create value for the organization and create value for the private industry that is an investor in MCEDC. And Mark's already, he's only been here, a couple months, but he's already started to lay that groundwork and already started meeting with businesses. And quite honestly, the private sector side of the financial growth has already started to occur. And I think part of that is just because it's Mark, and part of it is because he's working hard to get that to happen. I guess for me personally, I'd like to see the private sector side increase in value versus the county side increase in value in 2 years. I do feel that 160 is too low, but I'm not thinking 320. I would like to see maybe 175 or something, just as a way that it shouldn't have gone down 4 years ago, and quite honestly, it should have gone up a little bit. And so I feel like that taking an extra 15, maybe 20,000 is, to me, what will help propel the organization financially, and then allow the private sector to fill in the rest. That's my general thoughts on it. Yes.
So when we can, and I know Mark maybe hasn't been involved long enough to answer this question, but perhaps you do. When the board cut the amount down to 160, what kind of cuts then did MCEDC have to do to adjust?
Well, it was only
that?
$6,000, so it wasn't
Right.
like it was a huge.
Right, and then so it sounds like you're suggesting 175,000, right? What amount, what more, this is 15,000 do? I realize in the grand scheme of our budget, $15,000 is such a small addition, right? But, to put like an idea of what do we need to add, right? What is being deficient in the MCEDC that's going to be helped by this 15,000 or more? I don't even know. That's your number. I don't know what number Mark was thinking about.
I was thinking $1 million, but.
Right.
That would.
Right.
Well,
Right. So it's very. There's not like a concrete item like this is what we're going to do with this. This is how it saves them having to fundraise. I realize you get some of your money from partners, from members, right?
Yep.
Some comes from us. Where else does other funds come from?
Those are the two major revenue streams. You get some money from like the annual dinner produces, a little bit of revenue, as far as, that's, it's not really a fundraiser. It does produce some positive revenue stream, but again, it's not, it's not a lot.
Business programming classes, you're gonna talk about ARPA in a moment, and
Right.
there's some money that will come back to MCEDC there, but yeah, principally it's the private investors. And they're down.
Right.
We're down in private investors right now, and Mark's gonna effort to bring that back up.
And to answer your question,
Yeah.
When we're building a budget every single year, and Mark wasn't part of this year's budget, but we start at what our revenue is going to be for the year.
Right.
And then we say, what programming can we offer? And that's part of the challenge that we have is when you look at the investors, my company's an investor in MCEDC.
Right. Yeah.
What the hell am I getting for my money that I deliver every year?
Right.
Right now, it's a challenge. We've talked about this at the board level. It's a challenge because right now, I don't feel like the investors are getting any value besides feel good, hey, I'm a part of something that is helping out economic development in the county,
Right.
So I get a feel good, not to be flippant, but at least the chamber gives me a little plaque with a little sticker that says, 2024, you were a member, I don't even get that from MCEDC, So.
I also want to remind you that other sources of money, the MCEDC is now the contracted administrator of the McHenry County Enterprise Zone. So that is another source of revenue into MCEDC. It's certainly a source of work.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know how much revenue that really is.
There's good revenue, but
It's a
the
good
margin
nexus, it's a
that-
good nexus.
Yeah, there's a lot of work that we're doing there.
It's $60,000.
So I guess to answer your question,
Right.
it's, the organization, the board is challenging Mark and James, who's the other staff member, to really retool and organize that into what should have happened probably 4 or 5 years ago, as to get with where businesses need help now, and you'll hear a little bit with ARPA later about how Mark's proposing to start that. But really, business has changed, especially after COVID, and I don't feel that MCEDC has kept up with that. And so that's the more that we can be doing to help existing businesses and, in turn, not only attract new businesses, but retain them. And that's also a big issue, is retaining. We have seen numerous times where businesses, large employers, get bought out by whomever, and then suddenly they go bye-bye. Well, when you're losing, 100, 200, 300 jobs because, they got bought out, that's a problem, And so it's gonna take a whole bunch of small little businesses, micro businesses, startups, to try and replace all that. Otherwise, those people are not gonna go outside the county to get a job, which means that those resources, lunch, commute, all that stuff, leave the county, and that's not healthy for us. So I guess to answer your question, what is $15,000 or $20,000, pick whatever number you want.
Right.
It gives Mark the flexibility to create programs with the board that can help solve those issues that I'm bringing up.
Even more than that, when this happens, and it does happen in the life cycle of a free market, then they generally change vendors and go to national contracts, and then that money's not spent in the county, so you've got that multiplier, so it's really significant. And then I have another follow-up. What is the budget? Did I miss that? What is the budget for MCEDC this year?
The total, our budget?
No, the MCEDC budget. Do you have a pro forma budget for the year? Because I was just wondering what portion of 100, and whatever.
Somewhere I have a government reliance ratio that I calculated, and it is about 50% of our total budget. I think even a little bit more, so.
Okay, so you're talking between $250,000 and $500,000, depending,
The MCEDC budget for this year, we estimated revenues to be about 340.
Okay.
And you do have some municipal money in as well, right?
Well, but we're just saying total
Yeah,
revenue.
And then have you already identified how you want to spend the money? Yeah.
I mean, the budget was in place before I was hired, so
Okay. And so
yeah,
I know you can make changes to it, but it's identified with where it's going.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Anything else? Yes, Larry?
You're a director on the MCEDC, right?
I'm the board liaison, yes.
Okay. Is there anyone else from the board?
Pete's the only other person. He's not a board member, but I mean, he's an important person though.
I'm an MCEDC board member.
Yes.
Yeah. My position is always on there.
Okay, well, the contract is calling for the county to appoint 2 people, and they're gonna be voting members, but I thought you told me you were not a voting member?
I am a voting
You
member.
are a voting member. Okay.
We're both voting members.
Okay. So it's not necessarily county board members, it's staff? I mean, would you 2 be fulfilling these 2
Yes.
positions?
The agreement, I believe, specifically notes that whomever is sitting in the county administrator role of the county board, and then in another county board, which has generally been the finance chair.
Okay.
That's just organizational history.
Okay.
But I mean, similar to all the other appointments that we make, for all the other liaison organizations, when we reorganize, that's when, it could be anybody theoretically, but.
Okay. You don't feel like there's a conflict of interest that you're part of the board through your business and then you're coming from the county?
I'm not a part of the board from my business. I'm just an investor.
Okay.
I'm making a donation.
Okay. this conversation's gonna end, and I don't think we've resolved much.
Well, it's not ending.
Okay,
We're just having a discussion.
okay.
When does this need to move forward?
Well, I left it open-ended and I left it on this part of the agenda instead of on the consent because I didn't know where the discussion was gonna be going. I'd rather have a good discussion about it than just try and, put something through. And so if the committee feels that we should wait a month and either ask Mark or staff to put together information to help you make a decision, I'm fine with that. If there isn't any other information that we're looking for, then I would ask to try and plug in what the annual number will be for 4 years, or numbers if you wanted to, grow or whatever, you could, you don't have to have it a flat number. You can have 1 year be X and then add, something to that each year or whatever. I don't really care, but I'm looking for some direction. Carolyn.
So I agree with you. I think first of all, I think this is a very important partnership. I do like the fact that we're starting, like to your point, we're adding more of a business aspect to it, which would include small business focus that will help expand those services potentially, or that support, because small businesses are a huge part of our economy. So I appreciate that, and I do agree with you that it's, the fact that it went down and stayed flat for all these years, or these past several years, I think hasn't been good, and I'd be all right with increasing it, and then maybe talking about do you keep that flat for 4, or do you add like an increase per every year or every couple of years or something like that. So I think this is very important. I've always been a fan. I think we need to have that investment. I think they've done some great things. We really expanded on the tourism part of the county. I think there's just a lot we've been able to do. I think there's more opportunity now that Mark's on board. So I'm you've talked about what you thought, some of the ideas that you've had. I feel like that I'm in the same camp as that. But I'm fine with doing an increase of some sort that we could agree on. But if you guys would like to talk more and wait till next month, that's fine with me.
Terry?
I literally support the organization and am supportive of the organization. With the ARPA money that they have been awarded with the program, I do not see a reason to increase the money right now. They're very much in a rebuilding mode. And I don't think that with the changes that have happened in the organization, that the board is familiar enough to go on ahead and invest more money, especially in regard to what's going on overall in the economy with the recession and the inflation and all of the things. So I think that holding is okay, and then we could have a better idea going forward.
Anyone else? Yeah, Larry?
Sure. I guess I'll direct it to Mark. If you're new and the budget was created before you were there, if we did this, put this off for a month, would you be able to come back and say, this is what the budget is, this is where the money's going? Yes, it would be a big help to have an extra dollar amount. Or no, we can stick where we're at for this year. And with some kind of recommendation from you?
I'd be happy to create a presentation.
If that was something that we could get, I would feel more comfortable about voting on this.
Okay. Anyone else?
I
Yeah, Kelly?
I concur with Larry. I'd like to see a budget for the upcoming years to see where the money is coming from and going. And also, I thank you, Terry, for talking about measurables when it comes to economic investment, because I think that's important also for the other 2 items that we're investing in.
Okay. Do you want Mark to just create, so right now, I mean, the organization's getting $160,000 this year. So again, this contract is rolling forward. So do you want him to try and put something together on a 4-year basis so that you can see that versus just strictly 1 year if we're talking about a 4-year contract? I'm looking at
You're
you.
looking at me, but I don't know.
I thought you
Sometimes
said, yeah.
you're looking at me and talking to Kelly. I think a 4-year projection would be longer than, it'd be hard to be realistic for 4 years. I think 2 years would be fine.
Okay.
I mean,
Again, I'm just trying to lay out proper expectations for Mark, so.
What Larry supposedly asked for is what I was thinking of, is like, I don't know where the money is going. When I was a little kid, I wanted to raise my allowance, I had to show my mom, what am I gonna do with my extra dollars, right?
Lollipops.
Lollipops wasn't gonna give me my raise.
Oh.
And so that's it, like when I was saying that before, is, I don't know, it's an arbitrary number, I don't know what you want, I already said that. And so having this presentation of what we're gonna do with this, what they don't get to do if we don't raise it, that's very helpful,
Okay.
yeah. And so maybe for 2 years.
2 years?
Right, because we're saying we're gonna run out of, we're not gonna be able to fund it unless we start adding money, which I realize is gonna be part of the budget presentation next month, is that you are gonna wanna put something extra into it right now. Is that what that sounded like?
That'd be a
Not
recommendation.
into this, but into the
General
the
Economic
bucket.
Development Fund.
Yes, right. So, unless we think we're gonna start, unless our committee thinks that we're going to approve adding part of our tax levy to the bucket of economic development fund, we should just stick with 2 years. And as Terry's like laughing, she's like, no, she's not going to agree to put more taxes to it, yes.
All right, so 2 years.
Yeah.
I would try and create a pro forma for 2 years then, and we can bring that forward.
No problem.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
Then in regard to item 7.1, can I entertain a motion to have that move to, I don't know when next month's agenda is. I don't know when next finance is.
September 5th, I think, but I'm not positive.
That makes sense.
Huh?
Condos.
Okay, hold on a second.
It's 5th.
5th? Okay. So moving item 7.1 to the September 5th meeting.
I would make that motion.
Okay, Larry, Carolyn, any other questions on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mark, we'll see you on September 5th.
Looking forward to it.
We'll see you next week.
And we'll see each other in between, I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're gonna also see us in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. Also for item
Yes.
8.1.
Yes.
Item 7.2. Again, same discussion. I'll let Scott handle this one though.
There's really not much more to add to it. The Successor contract really follows the previous contract. There's no substantial changes except for updating. Once again, the amount is blank. The previous contract had $100,000 over 4 years. That amount was a reduction from the previous contract. One thing to note about the reduction, there was a trade-off. In both contracts, there was a requirement that each organization would prepare an audit and submit that to the county, and that was a cost to the organization. That was eliminated because they actually have audit requirements in other respects, and so there was a savings by eliminating the audit requirement, which was part of the rationale to reduce their dollars a little bit. But in this case, it's still blank. Naturally, McHenry County is funded roughly 50% through a state grant and through the Illinois Office of Tourism. And then the county is a major contributor, but there's a lot of municipal partners that are contributors, as well as businesses of tourism-related, visitor-related economy, businesses that are partners with this organization. So there's multiple funding sources. This contract, if you read it, I'm sure you have, has a requirement that they're funded, the county's funding is proportionate based on the amount of other dollars that they get in. And they've met that metric every year, so if they only get 70% of what we're requiring, then we would reduce our contribution accordingly. So they have a little bit of a variable to ensure that they're generating revenues on their own. And like I said, in the past, they've made that. I've not been able to prepare an analysis for this time because Jackie has actually been out. But being a member on the board, Deputy County Administrator and as one County Board Liaison, serve as members of the Executive Board, Board of Directors. So you have the representation. One item to note moving forward, in fact, this is with this current fiscal year for the NMC, which starts July 1, they added a new staff. It's called a Destination Engagement and Program Manager. So now they have a staff of 3 full-time. That new position really is out there to, as Mike mentioned from MCEDC, to work with business to provide value of National McHenry County to its partners and to help generate more business partners to join NMC. And with that, they get the benefit of the advertising, the marketing, the campaigns that NMC puts forward. So the intent is to ensure that there's value provided to the partners. But that new position is in there, and we're, as a member of the board, excited to see that step, because over the past several years, the shift has gone from the Convention and Visitors Bureau model to a destination marketing organization, and a strategic plan reflected that. And I think with this new realignment of staff and the addition of staff, that has really put them in that direction to be a destination marketing organization. So with that, once again, the question is funding level, if the county board chooses to continue this relationship. What I'll say though is, when I think of our economic development program, I think of 4 pillars. And MCEDC is obviously our key pillar, boots on the ground, meeting with the businesses. Naturally, McHenry County represents our visitor-based economy, which we have a substantial one in McHenry County. It's part of our economic development plan. Our municipal partners, because each municipality is out there working for themselves, trying to generate their, their development and their economic interests. And finally, our workforce network, which oversees and works towards ensuring we have a good, adequate, substantial, well-trained workforce to help our businesses be successful. So think of those 4 pillars. MCEDC and NMC are 2 of those 4 pillars. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
I would say the education side should be your 5th pillar.
You know,
You can have a 5-finger discount.
Yeah. I will change that. That's actually nice contribution. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
Catherine's in the room.
You're making me a little nervous.
I may have missed it, but what is the budget of Natural McHenry?
Roughly $380,000.
Okay, so kind of in line with MCEDC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Larry?
So the state's portion is about 50%, or is it based on what their budget is, and it is 50% every year?
No, so the state grant is based, it's a formula based on the amount of dollars available through the state, and then every year the county as well as municipalities submit a letter to the state stating that NMC is our representative, is our Convention and Visitors Bureau, that they'll represent us. So then our population gets put into their formula. So that's why it's important that we send this letter as well as other municipalities so they get credit for that. So based on that formula and the funding availability, and that's how they determine it. So it's not dependent on any other monies they receive.
Scott, to access the state dollars, we have to come up with a local match. Is that how it works?
We do have a local match. Yes, there is.
Yeah. So
It's
if we
Well,
don't,
that's
if
my
we don't
question
put in
was
some of
heading.
these dollars in Woodstock and Crystal Lake, then we can't get the state money.
Okay. That's where my question was heading. Is there any amount that from the state dependent on what we contribute?
Yeah, it's in some cases it was a 50% match, other cases 25% match. So that just recently changed. But now their state dollars they're restricted on what you can spend them on. There's only certain buckets that you can spend the state dollars on. So other dollars, they rely strictly on local.
Okay.
Anyone else have questions?
Well, I feel this is similar to what we just asked for with 7.1, which is what amount of money did National McHenry want to put in here, and what can they do with more money or less money? I mean, I'm assuming that nobody wants us that nobody in National McHenry wants us to decrease the amount.
So, no, but just looking at the current budget, there's about a $38,000 pull from reserves because of the new position that was created. Not sure what we're going to get for additional engagement, for additional partnerships.
Yeah.
You're having to come in with an estimate in the revenues on that. That was a very conservative estimate, so there's about a $38,000
Sure.
fund balance reserve that's coming into it. So that may be a partial answer to your question. Could they use up $38,000?
They want 38,000 would fix that hole, right?
Yeah, and that's, but I've not asked them specifically because I think it's appropriate that this committee, decide and determine, first and foremost, what the amount would be appropriate coming from the county.
Sure, it's 4 years and we're out of money in 2 years. Same situation as the last one.
So what would you like them to come back and present something like MCEDC is, or do you want to just, I'm looking to the committee, so.
I guess I feel that's appropriate too. I don't want to be the one guy creating more work for people, but.
But what?
But I think that would be appropriate, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have thoughts? No?
Yeah, and for purpose of disclosure, I am chair of the finance committee for McHenry County. So I would be part of developing this proposal.
I think that's great, and I would certainly trust your recommendation on it. Might not agree with it, but I trust it.
Well, plus I think it'd be good to get clarification on this drawdown of reserves and what that means, and if part of their funding is based on what we're providing, where does that fall out? How do we anticipate what that amount would be in order to meet that grant funding as well?
Okay, so 2 years again?
I think, yes, that'd be my
Okay.
answer.
All right.
Pro forma for 2 years? Okay. So then I'll entertain a motion to move item 7.2 to the September 5th finance meeting also. Teresa?
Second.
Larry seconds. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, we're on to item 8.1.
Thank you. Good morning again.
Hi, who are you again?
So I am Mark Picos, Executive Director of the McHenry County Economic Development Corporation. I'm joined by Catherine Jones, Associate Vice President of Workforce Development at McHenry County College. We brought Catherine today because she's here representing the Small Business Development Center at McHenry County College, because the last guy that they had abruptly vacated the seat, leaving her high and dry. But good news, right?
I'm happy to announce that we have filled the position. We have our new manager starting on August 19th. And so very much aware of this proposal and excited to jump in.
So before we dig in, I mean, we did just discuss a little bit about what the MCEDC is. It does. Is anybody unfamiliar what the Small Business Development Center does, or how it does its work prior to me diving into the program?
Why don't you just get...
Sure.
Let's do the quick. It is a grant-funded partnership from the SBA at the federal level, at the state level, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. We were just talking about match funds. MCC serves as the host of that center and does 100% cash match to those grant funds that come down. We serve businesses that employ up to 500 employees, so literally our county, with no cost business advising. So it's anything from a nascent or a startup business needing that business plan or positioning for financing to a more mature business that is facing some critical point in their maturity.
And so thank you again to the committee for reviewing our proposal. I know this is not the first iteration. When I came to MCEDC, we reviewed the existing proposals and determined them to not be feasible in the timeline which we were working with. So I immediately reached out to Catherine and said that I think that I have an idea for this that will help sustain and grow small to large businesses in McHenry County, and it's something that we can develop a partnership on and chase after that rising tide brings up all ships, right? So what we're looking to do, and you all, I think in your emails have both the proposal, the long form proposal and the pro forma. But what we're looking to do is create a advising / education program for business owners in which we will provide transition counseling to businesses. There's are some statistics out there that show nationwide that business owners, over 50% of our nation's business owners are age 55 or beyond, which is a perfectly fine age to be running a business, but that doesn't give us a great long-term perspective for 10 and 20 years down the road. Now, of that 50% of business owners, 88% of them don't have an exit plan, and it was a study done by EPI, the Exit Planning Institute, and that's true on the McHenry County level as well. We know this from our experience with ISBDC. We know this from anecdotal discussions, talking with business owners, talking about what kind of transition plans that they have in the future. So it's not an isolated problem; it's an endemic issue. And one thing that's important to remember about these woefully unemployed business owners is that they are our primary and secondary employers in our community. So while when we talk about an entrepreneur or we talk about a business owner, we think of that in the solo term, right? But truly, they're employing our population, and without their business ownership, those people are going to lose jobs, and like Mike said earlier, they're going to probably leave the county to seek work if these businesses decide to close down. So, in what we're doing here, the partnership allows us to enhance that existing tested infrastructure that the Small Business Development Center already uses. That is the pairing of targeted advising with a training. And the way that we're going to do that is through a two-pronged approach, right? And that is the transition planning side and the entrepreneurship through acquisition side. Because with any business transition, there's a buy side and a sell side, right? So what we're looking at doing is creating this advising program that is facilitated by subject matter experts who will actually go into these businesses and discuss with the owners, the leadership team, the generational team. Sometimes it's a family business and half the family doesn't know that the other family members are expecting them to take on the business. And I speak from personal experience to that end. So we'll have our subject matter experts sit down and create a transition plan, an exit strategy, a succession plan, whatever is fitting of the business's transitional strategy over about a 6-month period. And the idea is at the end of that, they will have a business that they're more deeply familiar with the value of it, right? They understand how much they could feasibly get. They're more familiar with the business owner's next steps, right? What does a legitimate retirement look like? I know some of you are business owners in here, and retirement is an ugly word, and we wouldn't know what to do with it if we were given the freedom to do whatever we wanted, right? And then of course how the continuity for the business itself, right? What happens to XYZ Incorporated after the owner is removed, right? Which is legacy is a significant portion of some of the fears that business owners have. The two-pronged aspect comes in when we talk about the entrepreneurship through acquisition side of things. What we're doing there is creating an interactive non-credit workshop that prepares attendees to purchase and operate existing companies, right? There's a significant lack of understanding that, hey, rather than hanging your own shingle, rather than starting your own business completely from scratch and having to go out and develop all of the resources, all of the capital, which may be tenuous to get, to say the least, look at the existing businesses that could already be doing what you're doing, and if maybe you have to recalibrate them a little bit to fit your need or fit what the market wants, but there are businesses in existence that could potentially be for sale, right? And so locally, there isn't necessarily a resource. You know, there are some things we've done at the Small Business Development Center, such as buying a business class, but there isn't a long-term resource that is establishing individuals to empower them to purchase businesses, right? We're not getting the baseline information. So that is the entrepreneurship through acquisition side. That is the idea behind the logo of the two arrows kind of circulating, is that we're creating both sides of the road there, and hopefully the twain shall meet at some point, right? Even going so far as to say we will create the participants in the entrepreneurship through acquisition class are going to create a CV, an entrepreneurship CV or resume that says, hey, I'm this person, my experience is in this, my education is in this. I see myself as a good business owner because of these reasons, and those owners who are looking to sell can look at that database discreetly and say, hey, I would really like to talk more with this person. I think that they're an excellent candidate for buying this business. So, we're hoping that we create some momentum so that we can avoid those businesses either shuttering, looking towards external resources. When I say external, I mean outside of McHenry County, right? Because there are plenty of private equity opportunities and places that will absorb businesses and sell it off for parts, or just utilize an existing framework of suppliers in Asia or whatever. So, what we want to do is keep these local businesses local, ultimately. There again, the impact of the program is not just isolated to these individuals. You've got to think of the employees of the business, which by our rough numbers, if you assume a 25-person average and we get to our target of counseling about 100 business owners, so that's 2,500 people who we've reduced the risk of them losing their job or having to look for other employment that might not be with a local business, so keep their dollars local. Simultaneously, with the people who experience the entrepreneurship through acquisition class, they also are going to have a ripple effect where their families and their, the people within their orbit are going to benefit from their newfound entrepreneurship, rather than maybe doing a small business that isn't tested. And as we all know, the old statistic that's always floating around, 10% of small businesses fail in the first year, 20 in the second year, 30 in the third year. So, this is a little bit of a backstop against that. So I'll discuss a little bit about why we are seeking Advanced McHenry County's assistance in this, but prior to moving to that, does anybody have any questions about the structure of the program? I know I've given a real high level, and there's of course a lot of moving parts, so happy to answer any questions before I move on.
Sure, yeah. And part of this was discussed, Mark, before you were involved, I'm sure, but there was quite a bit of discussion on the criteria and the $300,000. And maybe that's a number that we all participated in and resolved, as that was the particular number. The participant criteria, McHenry County owned, established for profit, and the $300,000
in revenue.
Mm-hmm. Is that a comfortable number? Is that what we decided a long time ago? That's a long time ago when we were talking about that ARPA money.
And I have updated some of those criteria for this program particularly, right? It wasn't a copy and paste from the former iteration of this program. McHenry County owned is self-explanatory, right? We are working with McHenry County businesses to keep them McHenry County businesses. For-profit entities is because the SBDC's grant does not allow them to work with non-for-profit organizations, and our organization is targeted towards for-profit businesses. The $300,000 or more a year in annual revenue, that is, one thing that we're not doing with this is trying to create a pivot for startup businesses. We don't want someone who has created a fulfilled by Amazon, thing out of their basement that is just not really doing much for McHenry County's economy, and then them, waylaying that. We're not creating a marketplace for that. Biz Buy Sell exists for that. There are plenty of groups on Facebook you can join to sell your singular thing, right? So we're looking to attract businesses that have you have a presence existing, right? We did kind of pull back on the age of business so that it's not restricted. So that way, if somebody said, hey, I started this 2 years ago and we've reached a revenue number where it's really positive, but things have changed for me and my family, and so I want to transition this to someone who is, in a better position to run it. So that was the reason behind the $300,000 or more in revenue. And then, of course, the last criteria line item is self-explanatory too. They have to be thinking about a succession, or a transition, or a divestiture, right? It's that would be part and parcel to what we're trying to do.
It was $500,000, if you recall, and then.
That is my problem, Mike, recalling.
Okay, so it was $500,000, and when I was talking with Mark about it, $300,000 is $25,000 a month. I mean, that's not a huge revenue stream number,
Well, bringing up that conversation, I thought we had changed that number at one point, and I just wanted to confirm that.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Mark.
So the need for advance McHenry County's role, as I've already illustrated, that this is not entirely dissimilar to what the SBDC does, right? But the SBDC's budget is somewhat limited in that they have plenty of work for themselves already, right? There are no shortage of new businesses in the pipeline for them. So this is extension beyond that, and it's targeted specifically to a sensitive demographic of business owners rather than trying to capture the whole. And so the program development is critical here on both sides of the program in terms of the transition planning side. Neither myself or who's going to be in the SBDC are certified transition planners, nor do we have the capacity to do that. So we're going to need some folks who are smarter than us to come in and say this is the best way to create a strong and lasting transition for an existing business. Simultaneously, compensation of contracted advisors. We are going to bring subject matter experts in who have experienced this themselves, who work in this day in and day out, and they can create specific, tailored advising for these businesses. And the same is true for the entrepreneurship through acquisition. You want somebody who's been around the horn to that end. And then, of course, you'll notice if you look at the pro forma we've established that there is revenue, right? We are charging a fee for these services. The fees at the outset are going to be nominal, right? It'll be $600 for someone to participate in the transition planning program, whereas the actual market value for something like that is upwards of $3,000. I spoke with someone yesterday who they charge for a similar service $500 an hour, right? And so it's a great value to them. However, it's important to us that we create some a foundation that we can utilize in the future to sustain this program. So therefore, we will be charging in advance. And with the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition workshop program, we will be structuring that as a scholarship. Again, market rate for something like that, a 8-week course, about $18.99. We'll do 10% of that. We'll scholarship that down for qualified applicants down to 10%, so $189. And as the program gets its own legs and moves on, you'll see we'll kind of transition out of utilizing ARPA dollars or Advanced McHenry County's dollars into the program sustaining itself. And we anticipate it's something that will last long beyond 2029, which is what I projected out to. But I wanted to demonstrate that the program does have the ability to be profitable on its own. We just need assistance in development. And then there are line items for the increased administrative costs for both MCEDC and the ISBDC, because this is outside of the normal, the normal day-to-day functions that those programs are independently funded for.
He has a couple of Earl Shive specials in there for companies. Do you even remember what Earl Shives was? Okay, that's all right.
Not an Earl Shive result.
All right, that's all right. Exactly.
By 8, out by 3.
Yeah.
By 3.
Oh, you go.
Okay, the scholarship thing, I didn't quite catch it all when you were going through it. And is everybody's can qualify for the scholarship, but only a certain amount of people will get that, or is everything reduced to the 189?
There'll be an application for the scholarship for that class.
Okay, so that's not for everybody, just a certain amount of people will get that? And who's going to make that decision?
So we are going to create a steering committee for this that's going to consist of community business owners, representatives from MCEDC and ISBDC, right? And they will be the scholarship review board.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that combination allows us to set a market rate for the program right out of the gate. So we're already working towards sustainability while using the grant funds to make sure that we're not losing people because of financial barriers.
Okay, good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Terry?
Question or comment. But I have to say the scholarship for the entrepreneurial person, that they would need that, might say something about their ability to purchase. But anyway, aside from that. Living through 2012 and having 5 of the 6 largest companies in the county acquired by richer capitalists, and then seeing what that has done and promises made that were broken within 6 months. And then many, as you said, squeezing out the margins, changing the culture, and then in some cases decide they don't hit their profitability numbers and then they're closed, or their competitive line shut down. So bought for that purpose. Versus a company like decades ago, Scott Forge, where they went to employment stock ownership. And I know that these companies would fall out of this, but is there any, I remember during that time, or maybe even 2 to 3 years before that, when you can see the change coming, and bringing up to them, what about employee stock ownership? Because there are organizations that help them set this up and get the financing. Mm-hmm. And the answer was always like, oh, they couldn't afford that. But they can. And it just makes me sad, because the difference in a company like that, and you look at Scott Forge, largest foundry in North America, and leading in its industry and all. So is there anything in either of these organizations that when we spot something like that on the horizon, that we get in there and talk to those owners to direct them to, even though it wouldn't fall in this category necessarily, to basically open their eyes to the possibilities? And sometimes it's about more than money, because at that point,
I do think that would be on the table when we're talking about creating that transition plan. So we're looking at multiple types of transition, and I think employee ownership is right there. I think the marketing piece of this is so important, because this program has to get out ahead of private equity, right? Yes. Private equity is circling all the time. And so that awareness is established. I think any one of our business owners that fit this category could call private equity today. Mm-hmm. We've got to displace that.
Okay. Wonderful. And thank you. I don't know the development of this concept and how you presented it today is so appreciated. Really, thank you.
Good. Anything else? No? Okay. So we don't need to vote on this. This is just, I guess I would look for a concurrence from the committee that to allow Mark the opportunity to run with this program and, you know, start putting it together.
It's been a long time coming, and I think it's looking good.
Okay. And you have the concurrence that you need.
Thank you.
Carrie was very happy. Not you, Carrie, the other Carrie.
It's my
Okay.
goal to make all the carries.
Okay.
Very, very wise.
Sounds great. Hey, Mark, don't go too far here.
Okay, thanks, Catherine.
Okay. Well, actually, can we just have Mark do on the report section, the EDC, so that he doesn't have to sit through budget stuff? Okay, you want to just give a quick update on report 12.3?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I usually do it, but I mean, you know, you're much more.
Certainly. Well, you've just seen what this week has looked like for us, right? There's been a lot of efforts dedicated to establishing this program, working the kinks out, and identifying the strategic partners that are going to be participatory as this program comes together. In addition to that, a large part of what we're working on now is getting the enterprise zone rocking and rolling as a reliable and well-marketed resource for businesses in McHenry County to expand and then attract some as well. We've been doing a lot of work on the website and of course the logistics of just how that program is represented. Simultaneously, we are working on getting the annual dinner ready to go, which everyone mark your calendars. It is November 13th. We've selected a speaker. It's going to be very exciting. I won't disclose the speaker's name in the public minutes, so we can keep that as a nice surprise.
What?
But we'll say that he was a monster of the Midway, perhaps. Does that track with everybody?
Yes.
And so we're really excited about this year's annual dinner. I think it's going to bring a new level of excitement and a new level of commitment. The theme is collaboration, and we'll have the keynote speaker talk a little bit about he and Walter Payton collaborated to create a really viable team back in the day. In addition to that, one thing that we are also working on re-engaging with is the EDGE group, the connection group for the economic developers in McHenry County, so each of the individual municipalities, plus the chambers of commerce, right? One thing that is clearly evident to me in creating value for our municipalities, and then by extension the companies within them, is that we have to have very, very succinct lines of communication between us when it comes to site selection or when it comes to collaborative efforts to work together to kind of raise all of the ships. And we've been lacking in those meetings. So tomorrow I'll attend the McHenry County Planners meeting, and we're going to talk about how we'll re-engage with the EDGE group as well. I had mentioned that, well, the last meeting was a month ago, so we probably covered the GSEP stuff, right?
Go for it.
Okay, so we had as I mentioned before, we had a Brazilian delegation visit McHenry County. They were particularly interested in our innovative agriculture system. These were researchers, startup businesses, representatives from, or heads of state in Brazil, and we took them on a nice tour.
Big business.
And yes, and some corporations as well. And we took them on a nice tour. We started off at McHenry County College, talked a little bit about what we're doing for the education and talent pipeline side. We took them to Bull Valley Farm and Von Bergen's farm, it was a really cool day. It was really enjoyable, and I think that we're still in conversation with them, so hopefully something comes out of that. Recently with Region 1, we've worked very closely with them on 2 RISE grant applications. I'm not sure what is gonna come out of them, but we discussed doing something in the innovative agricultural side with that as well, something to help reduce barriers for talent pipeline in innovative agriculture. So aside from that, am I forgetting anything?
GSEP is coming out.
Yes, so GSEP will be here on September
Kyle Schultz will be addressing the cow meeting in September, but the GSIP is having their
Annual.
Yes, so
quarterly meeting where-
monthly, GSEP has a pipeline and strategy meeting. This is where we get together and talk about regionally what ought we be focusing on, right? As a group of economic development organizations, what can we collaborate on regionally? So we're gonna be, and they're gonna be, it switches locations. Like I went to Yorkville 2 months ago, and in August, on the 22nd, they'll be visiting McHenry County. We'll actually be talking about something really cool that GSEP's research department is doing, and they are creating a regional identity. So it's good that we're going to have a voice in that, in discussing, hey, how would we like McHenry County represented in the Chicagoland regional identity, and what does that regional identity mean to us as well.
We're hosting them at the Caddy.
What's that? Right now we're hosting them at McHenry County College. We'll do a tour of Caddy. Because it is the first day of school, so they're going to be at it. So MCC's graciously allowing us to use their facility, but we'll hopefully be able to do a tour of Caddy at that time as well.
Caddy's the new.
Yes.
I was gonna say, yeah.
That's a new building that's being built there for industrial.
Center for Advanced Technology and Innovation.
Thank you.
And we also were at the opening, some of you were there as well, of the new University Center in Woodstock, which also houses, what is it called now?
Catalyst Campus.
Catalyst Campus, which is the workforce development programs. And so that's something that we'll be working closely with as well.
The Shaw Center facility is on the market.
Sold.
I saw a sign out in the yard the other day, but maybe it's sold under contract.
It's been.
So one of the individuals on this Brazilian delegation, when I did the math, he owns, in essence, land that would equate to half of McHenry County in Brazil that he farms.
Quite the footprint.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
How many acres is that?
180.
Yeah, like 180,000 or something like that. I mean, I had to do the math because I was trying to think, like, that's a crap load. What is that? Like, and so then I had to look up, well, how many acres are in McHenry County, and that's how it was roughly half of McHenry County. And he's looking to grow still.
It was really, really interesting.
He really needs to be a part of our program for what is he going to do for transitioning.
Yeah.
Where he was at, in life, he's probably looking at transitioning at some point.
We'll make an exception. One external McHenry.
Exactly.
McHenry County.
Tell him how to come back here. Anyways, okay. Anything else for Mark? Okay. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you guys next month a couple times.
All right. Budget reviews. We start the process of budget reviews every month now.
We did 5 yesterday. You too, Mark.
Dan,
Yeah?
Dan, do you want me to send him a team so Kelly can see it?
Oh, okay.
That's all. What?
I sent Kelly the team, she can see it.
Oh.
Thank you for thinking of me, Kathy.
Wanted to do it that way, but. She said, thank you for thinking of her. You're the bomb.
Dan.
Dan Harmer hasn't. He's.
I'd like to get in your car, drive for half an hour and still be on your land.
Apparently has his own helicopter.
Sounds like the 4.6s in Texas.
Yeah.
Some of the teams so that she can see it.
I'm going to share this.
You're in
Use one of the last pages.
Them doggies moving right. Hit 'em up, move 'em out, hit 'em up, move 'em.
What do they call Cowboys and Caballeros?
That's sure, that's all I need.
What?
Cowboys in Brazil, Caballeros, right there.
I don't speak Spanish really well, so.
Perfect, thank you.
You go from Texas. from South Padre Island.
Well, good morning. I'll do my
Actually, I
best
think
to
they speak
keep this short and sweet.
Portuguese in Brazil, yeah. But I still think.
All right, hey, sorry, we're.
That's okay. No,
Go
actually,
ahead.
I'm going to do my best to keep this short and sweet for you. I'm Adam Latondred, for those of you who might not know me, but I think you all do, Director of Procurement and Special Services. We're a really small kind of internal services department here at the county. We're established by county ordinance. There's a total of 2 procurement specialists, 1 administrative specialist, 1 mail center supervisor, 1 mail clerk, and me actually also. An interesting fact about our budget, if you take a look at this line item, this is our entire budget proposed for 2025. The commodities total, if you were to remove personnel, take out the cost of postage, and take out the cost of our county-wide mail and package tracking system lease, this department operates on $22,000 a year. That's everything.
Let's cut it.
That's everything in our budget. Slight reduction this year. I think we took $800 out because we're not counting procurement codes, and we had a subscription with the NIGP organization that puts that together. We don't need that anymore, so that was about $800. But that's really my budget. I have no supplemental requests. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions about what we do or what you see here.
Okay, who's got driving questions?
Is the increase because of the increase in the annual pay increases for the personnel staff? Is that pretty much it?
Pretty much it, yes, pretty much it.
No changes in how they're allocated or the titles or?
No, not at all. No changes to personnel, no headcount increase or decrease, no changes to positions.
Great job.
You also had, I think, 4 out of your 6 that got an increase in the comp study.
Oh, I can speak to that across the board. Yeah, in my 6 years here, 4 to 5 of the 6 people in my department every year every time the HR has done a classification and compensation study, 4 to 5 of the 6 people in my department received that on top of the COLA in December. I promoted 2 people approximately a year and a half ago. Even in the last classification and compensation study, 1 of those people was still found to be so far below market they had to come up. So no decision of mine, no decision of finances. It's just the matrix in HR. My department seems to be on the low end when things are being told to catch up in HR.
Any other questions?
But does that come from the rest of the market then? That the professions of your employees are market-wise having high increases in their pay in the private sector?
Well, not necessarily the private sector. I believe I don't want to speak for HR, but the class and comp study mostly focuses on regional and local governments.
Okay. And then after we looked at the market, largely public, but there was some private sector positions looked at too. Then the strategy was to get anybody, once they're properly classified, to the midpoint, at least the midpoint, by 10 years, right? And Adam had some employees that had been here for some time period that kind of accelerates to the midpoint. There's no commitment beyond the midpoint, but at least to the midpoint by 10 years. A combination of those 2 pressures.
Right, we're getting there. It's a good conversation, honestly, to have with them when there's kind of 2 increases for them a year, when one of them's not COLA or it's something else. But it makes me a little bit nervous when every time it comes around, I've got 4 to 5 to 6 people in my department that are below. But we move them up.
Then is your department one that's been secure that your employees have been there for a while? Because I don't remember where I heard it, but someone said to me that we have a lot of people who have only been countywide, not in a short time period. So you have longevity in your department?
I have longevity in my department.
Yeah.
I would say in the 6 years I've been here, I've had to let 1 person go, but that replacement has been here since then. And the mail center is where I see the most turnover, but that was mostly due to a retirement and 1 person I can't blame for going back to college to finish their education.
Teresa, Adam Wallen presented a graph
Yeah.
on Monday or Tuesday of this week showing his longevity of staff. And
Oh, that's where I heard, somebody talked about that to me, yes.
There's a big number of staff in P&D that have been here less than 4 years.
Yeah, I couldn't remember where it was, but yeah, somebody was talking about the PED meeting. That is how I heard about it.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, concurrence to move budget forward?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, the moment we've all been waiting for. Carrie, come on down. You're the next contestant on the Finance and Audit Committee meeting.
Just join.
I love your cup, by the way.
I can't see what it says, but I have to look at it after
It
the
was a
meeting.
Christmas gift. Christmas gift from my staff. My degree.
It basically says she's a really great boss.
Okay.
I think they were making fun of me though. Okay, I have a couple housekeeping items first. In June, there was an NAU intern resolution that you guys passed to bring on to county admin. And the resolution increased the budget to personnel. And after we worked through the contract and things finalized, it's actually gonna be a contractual service. So it's only $11,500, but per the budget policy, I can't just move it from personnel to contractual without permission. So I didn't wanna have to do a resolution, I will, but it just seems like kind of just a housekeeping item. So can I move the budget from?
So are you asking for permission or are you asking for forgiveness?
I am asking for permission.
Okay.
Because I haven't moved it yet.
The issue is the NIU has a program where they can award scholarships to their interns, but to do so, there has to be a contractual relationship. Okay. So instead of us paying this intern, NIU is going to pay this intern, and we will get an invoice from NIU.
But isn't the intern done already?
What's that?
Isn't the intern done already?
This is the new one, the graduate student intern that's starting at the end of the month.
Oh, okay, all right, it's a new one. Mm-hmm. Okay. So does anyone have any concern, or can we?
Yeah, our interns over the summer have been all volunteers.
Oh, okay, got it. Are we okay with giving permission? Yes.
Thank you.
Got a thumbs up.
Thank you. I don't like to do resolutions for something.
It's all good. Thank you for asking.
Next is the RTA, and DOT has been asking me for a couple months and I keep forgetting. So back in 2010, there was a policy set by the then Finance and Audit Chair that any resolution that included spend from the RTA had to go to both TC and to Finance and Audit, regardless of the amount. In all the other highway funds, there was thresholds. So it only would come to Finance and Audit if it was $750,000 for engineering or $5 million or over for construction. And I think when the RTA was initially set up, the fund, it was in Department 99, which controls security and spend and things like that. And I think that was done at the time as a kind of a certain level of control, because we would,
Can I help?
they would spend, yeah, because you were here in 2010.
Yeah, I was here then. When the RTA sales tax was created in 2008, it was intended to fund transportation. At the last minute down in Springfield, there was a line put in that you could also use it for public safety. So we do have that option to use it for public safety, but at the time we didn't really know. And we didn't want, the then board, I think appropriately and conservatively and cautiously said, let's keep it in a separate fund and not let transportation have all of it. We've only used it for public safety, I think, in one instance in like 14 years.
For the jail, yeah.
So what prompted this is a few months ago, we had like an $8,700 bill or something like that was going to, out of the RTA money, and it had to come to finance. And it was just like, is this really what we need to do anymore? So I'm very comfortable with just using it for transportation and using the transportation thresholds for bringing forward.
Right. And I mean, there's still control in the budget process.
We know.
Budget policy, yeah.
If a situation presents itself at some point in the future where we want to use it for public safety, it's there.
Yes.
We know that.
So did Mark have that codified in policy, or how was that
I
codified?
could not find any type of board action.
So it was verbal?
It was a memo.
It was a memo,
Yeah.
right? But I'm not
From
sure.
Mark, I'm sorry.
Mark was the old
Mark
finance
Loretto.
chair back in that time. So what do you need from, I mean, if there's nothing codifying that, why wouldn't it just revert back to what?
It's been that way, yes. So I didn't want to just.
I'm not comfortable, without talking about it, at least, we're changing
Procedure?
15 years of organizational operation, where we've always brought anything spending RTA to this committee, and
And is that partly because it can be
because it can.
be
Yes.
for safety?
Yes.
But you're saying if we don't do that, because routinely we haven't been applying it to safety except for that one time, if we,
Public safety. Yeah.
the public safety, for the sheriff purposes.
At the time, again, this is almost 20 years ago now, but DuPage County was having real budget crunches in public safety and circuit clerk unions and they wanted to, they didn't need the transportation monies in the same ways that other counties did, so they just wanted to have the option. So they put it in there and you can use it for public safety.
Right, but so we kind of did that because it's in there, but if you just make the decision that to have it go through transportation unless it meets the threshold coming here. You're saying though, we don't give up the ability to use it for public safety in the future if we want to.
You don't, no, but honestly, your transportation staff think as though those dollars are all for them because that's how we've been operating. And they're building a 5-year transportation plan on the expectation that those dollars are going to be used for our transportation needs.
So what are you looking from on behalf of the committee?
I just wanted in the record that we can stop bringing, we'll only use the thresholds of for whatever they are.
Well, and that was their second ask, to increase the threshold. So right now it's 750,000 for engineering and 5 million for construction. And they were asking for 1 million for engineering and 6 million for construction.
And they'll still go to transportation committee.
Yes, yes,
So your thresholds are whether it comes to finance or not?
correct,
So 1 million to engineering and 6 million for construction.
yes.
Comes into threshold.
And then, I mean, there's other things that come through RTA that don't fall into those categories, so maybe like a.
You notice on the county board agenda, seems like everything comes through finance, but then there's a transportation section, right? And there are generally a handful of items that have only gone to transportation committee,
Right.
and that's because they're falling underneath these thresholds.
And staff is asking for that in terms of, is that when you say they? Because you're on the
The
transportation
division of
committee.
transportation, yes.
I'm sorry?
The whole team.
The team of transportation,
Yes.
not the transportation committee, because you sit on there, so you, okay.
The staff, yes.
Well, this wasn't brought up to transportation committee.
Second ask. Let's put the second ask in a resolution.
To change the thresholds.
Yeah. I don't remember it being in TC either.
We haven't talked about it at TC.
Right.
But the initial question, are you okay with that one?
Which the,
This stuff coming to finance.
right.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I don't know what Mark's thinking was back then, but I mean,
None of
maybe it
their
was.
other funds come to finance.
No, correct, I
Unless
get
they
it.
meet these
The
thresholds.
threshold, right.
So I'm okay with that thought. I don't know what Mark's thought process was, but I mean, I don't have a problem with it following whatever the procedure is. And if you want to change that, then I think you should put something in writing because that should go through TC committee.
The thresholds?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I don't want to arbitrarily. Yeah, Kelly?
I just want to know why the transportation team is asking for the change.
In thresholds?
Yes.
Or just to not come to finance, I think it's just time and efficiency, so they don't.
Yeah. It's easy enough to understand that with the escalation on all these transportation costs, that they're just seeing more and more tripping over these thresholds, and they would just like to raise them. But I don't want Carrie to be the messenger on that, let's get them to do it.
So it's just basically to save time and they wouldn't have to come to the finance committee to present. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Do the thresholds have to go through a resolution? I mean, can't we just say increase the thresholds? It makes sense.
I don't
I don't agree. I'm fine with that. The problem is it should start at transportation. It hasn't gone through transportation at all. We haven't had that discussion, and I don't want to arbitrarily, as finance, make a decision that hasn't even started at transportation. That's
But maybe.
That makes sense.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm thinking that maybe they came here first because whether or not we want to continue to see it, right? And if we say that it's
well,
fine.
that part I don't have a problem with, and I feel like that part is something that a past finance chair and finance committee made a decision on. So I don't have a problem with saying that doesn't have to happen anymore. But the threshold side that I think transportation should have, committees should have a say on first. I mean, because if the transportation committee says, yeah, no, we want that still to go to finance, then we're not having that discussion. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Next is, because I know you guys are on the edge of your seat,
literally.
I know. We are almost done with the single audit. The official due date is August 31st. But we have the draft, but I don't think there's going to be any changes. We're just waiting on one thing from one of the CD programs that was audited. So I will just send that out when I get the final draft, but no additional findings. And do you guys all know what the single audit?
I don't think I do.
Okay. So anyone that receives more than $750,000 in federal grants is required to submit a single audit and then have that audited separately by Baker Tilly. And we have this year about $22.5 million. So we're well within the threshold, but it's just for federal grants and the expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, last. The major revenues. Kelly, I'll put this on your screen. Sorry, is it too small?
What?
Is it?
I can see it. I can read it, yes.
Be in a second. There.
That's not the standard.
What's up?
Because your eyesight's probably very good.
I just wear glasses, actually.
Oh, really?
And I can still see it just fine. So take that, husband, who's not even listening.
What? You want to be your surrogate husband?
You.
Okay, so as we're working through the expenditures and the revenues with the departments, another thing we start to talk about are some of these major revenues. And we presented this to you guys, we present it every year. Sorry, just Oh, thanks, Dan. So these are, most of this affects the general fund only outside of this RTA sales tax line. And it's just kind of our first look at property tax plus our other major revenues. And the one thing that I kind of wanted to note this year is, you know, the state is behind in paying these out to us. So some of these are just 5 or 6 months of actual. But the annualized amounts have really started to level off. So I think it's important, you know, Mike wanted to talk about this a little earlier this year. It's important because in prior years, these have been a little bit stronger.
The sales tax numbers have benefited from inflation.
Yeah.
We've seen our sales tax really go up in the last 2-3 years, and that's when we've also seen inflation really jump. We now see inflation kind of cooling off, so you're seeing things kind of flat.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we don't have to decide anything on this today, but just to start thinking about where these actuals are coming in. And some of these, like the state income tax and the replacement personal property tax, the state will actually give us a better estimate. It's not out yet for the next year, but I think 2.2 may even be a little high for that one.
So when what day did we go over this? Monday?
Seems like a long time ago.
Yeah, I don't remember. And, you know, I started looking at all this information and, you know, the question was, well, do I bring this Thursday? And I think it's important that the committee starts to see, you know, some of the areas of concern that I have in regard to, you know, the budget coming up. I know there's always a concerted effort by the board to try and keep property taxes as low as possible. And staff works under that assumption every single year.
Every single day.
Huh?
Every single day.
Well, yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of concerns that I have about not only next year's budget, but budget years going out, based on some of the data and information that, you know, we have collectively as a board have been presented in the past, but sometimes, you know, you get it presented to you and you forget about it. So, you know, I have asked Carrie to create a budget scenario going forward for the next 3 years. And part of the reason for the 3 years is because our ARPA dollars run out, and that is funding reoccurring expenses currently that we don't have a revenue stream to pay for right now, to the tune of 2.2 million, 2.1 million?
2.8. That's an annual number.
Okay, annual number.
Yes.
Well,
I mean,
some of that is, not all of that is 100%
right.
reoccurring. So a short story is we have those numbers that we have to deal with. We have personnel costs that are going up and have been going up. And you know, again, every time we do one of these studies, we are increasing personnel costs, which again, in order to retain, as a service organization, in order to retain the employees, you have to, otherwise they'll be leaving. So, you know, my concern that I shared was that without like a 3-year projection going out, you know, we can easily cover this year's budget. The problem is if we keep on taking that thought process moving forward, in 3 years, when we have to use general revenue dollars because there's no more ARPA dollars, even if the board wanted to, by taking new growth and the full CPI, which even if we say Diggles is, you know, whatever, pick a number, 3.5% at that point, you know, it could be even lower if we do get into kind of a recessionary time, that total new dollar amount generation will not be enough to cover expenses. And so it becomes a problem where as a service organization, now you're looking at making cuts to personnel because that's your biggest line item. And what services will we try and cut in order to utilize that? part of what has been saving us for many years is departments are doing a great job of using automation to not cut staff, but also through attrition, not rehire staff. And so Terry, I know she's not here, but I mean, you know, she's talked a lot about, you know, staff openings and where we're at with that and how that gets budgeted. But at some point in the future, you know, automation is, you know, Pete brought up AI. You know, AI can be a helpful tool going forward somewhat, which I agree with. Scary as all hell, but yeah, I agree with. And so but I don't, you know, we're not talking about 20, 30, 40 people worth of AI technology as far as efficiency goes. So I wanted to put this out here before the committee as soon as possible so that you could start looking at it, digesting it, asking questions. But really, we're going to be doing a much deeper dive into, you know, and for me, it's more about the out years than it is specifically about this year. We currently see about a $4 million between revenue and expenses shortfall. You know, there are some areas that staff is still looking at to try and close that gap. But preliminarily, it's, you know, about 4 million. And again, is that I think that's closable. But again, you know, if the thought process is that we are not going to take any CPI, that becomes more challenging. And if we're not taking CPI because, you know, it's an election year and no one wants to vote for, you know, tax increases, that becomes problematic for, you know, out years, which I feel is my responsibility to show. Again, board can decide what they want to do, but at least show what current decisions are having an impact on future situations. And, you know, not to be kind of an ass about it, but, you know, those that are running are going to be here for 4 more years. So if they get elected, they're going to have to deal with that problem. So, you know, it's like, hey, you want to get reelected, great. I'm glad you want to serve another 4 years, but you're also going to have this problem to deal with in 2 years. So, fair and forewarned, I guess.
Mike, can you point out the mental health reduction?
Yeah, so I asked Carrie also to put that N area in because you know, we had made a dedicated promise to not only the voters, but to the people of the county that we were going to be reducing property taxes by the mental health board levy. And so I wanted that to be very clear in the showing of that, you know, for those that are looking at this information. So, you know, in essence, property taxes are going to go down next year already just because of the mental health levy being taken out of the equation. But it also poses a problem because your percent of CPI is based on the total aggregate. Well, after this year, that aggregate's going to be smaller. So your percent of what you can take on a smaller aggregate is going to yield lower results. So again, you know, people aren't necessarily thinking about that, but that's the factuality of it. So if we have a 3-year forecast, then, you know, you can see how that impacts things, you know. So 5% on 70 million is different than 5% on 60 million, you know, and it's, you know, it's not just a couple of dollars. What else? I mean, I know that we talked about a lot of stuff.
Those 5 columns represent the 5 scenarios that are suggested in the budget policy, you know, with the 3% reduction, no change at all, just the new growth, half of the allowable CPI and all of the allowable CPI. Predicated on backing out the mental health money. we'll be working with those scenarios as we move into September.
And that being the current CPI.
Yep, that's what we would be dealing with, 3.4.
3.4 is the max.
Are we talking at all about the Scala plan? No?
Well, now we're
trading. I mean,
Okay, that's fine. I'm
we have
asking the
a lot of
question.
unanswered questions still.
Okay.
about what we can in Baker Tilly and what we can and cannot do, so.
Okay. Then we'll, to be had discussion in the
Tune in
future.
next month.
Yeah, to next month.
I'm on pins and needles waiting.
There's lots of levers to pull.
I'm just,
Yeah.
we had some future concerns and I kind of came up with a proposal idea that, you know, I ran past everyone and it's trying to solve a lot of those problems. So, but, you know, I'm always told, well, is that legal? Can we do that? You know, I'm always never asking for permission. I'm always asking for forgiveness. So staff is like, we have to ask for guidance first. So that's fine. What else do you have?
Carrie, would you mind sending this to us?
Sure.
Thanks.
And then I'll keep updating it as we get actuals from the state, so we know the next couple of months.
Do you have anything else?
I do not.
Any questions for Gary? No? All right. Then Natural McHenry County.
All right. Just a few items to report. I did note in our contract discussion that NMC brought on a new staff member. Her name is Sarah Kane. Sarah Kane was is going to be the engagement, destination engagement and marketing, or should be program manager. Destination engagement program manager for NMC. She previously was a marketing coordinator for Veterans Path to Hope and is a Woodstock resident. So very excited to have her on board. She started beginning of July with a new fiscal year. Really intended that position is to go out and solicit new partnership, new engagement for NMC. So we're really excited about that. We expect great things out of Sarah and Jackie and her team as they develop and become a destination marketing organization. The next meeting will be on August 22nd at 3:30 p.m. at Von Bergen's farm. So Tracy Von Bergen is the county board liaison on the board and has graciously offered to host the next meeting. So that should be a wonderful meeting. It is actually a little bit off. Normally they would meet today, but due to vacation scheduling, it just didn't work out. So that's why it's going to be on August 22nd. So it's a little bit of an off date. And one item to report, this just popped up. Since April of 2015, National McHenry County was housed at the Hackett House in Huntley, at the intersection of 47 and Main. When Huntley redid everything and they redid that house, and they basically offered it to National McHenry County at a really discounted rent. So they've been there for, well, going on a decade. Unfortunately, in March of 2025, that lease is going to expire, and Huntley has indicated that they want to convert that space to incubator space. So really, certainly understandable move for Huntley, but that puts us into a position to, us as National McHenry County, to find a new home. So we've obviously a fair amount of time to do that. You know, rent is going to be a consideration when we talk about maybe a pro forma. That's something that we're going to have to build in because, you know, Huntley was pretty gracious on their rent. So we're not sure what that would look like. So it's going to be a variable in any pro forma going out for 2 years because we're going to have to make a guesstimate based on market rate. There's a few options of space that will be coming available that we'll look at in the near term. But that's something that's on our radar. Just want to let you know too that with that move, we'd have to do probably a marketing campaign because we want to make sure there's visibility for National McHenry County. So everybody knows.
Reminder how tightly knit our visitor economy and our Economic Development Corporation are. Prior to 2015, the MCEDC and National McHenry County shared space. So
That's right.
So do you know offhand how much space they have? Or what they're looking for?
You know, actually, I have the lease up. I can pull it if you.
No, it's okay. I was just kind of curious about what about the space they're looking for.
Yeah, you know, I think it's about 1,400 square feet. In fact, with what they're in, I'm gonna, since I have that number, it's not a whole lot. It's going to be 3 staff members. There's a conference room. Obviously, there's a reception area. So hopefully it's not going to be a challenge to find, but approximately 1,300 square feet first floor only of the Hackett House is what they're in now.
And the third
And that
person-
would be sufficient space. They think something like that they can make work. So we'll be getting to work on that sooner than later. March will come by pretty quickly.
Well, if you move too much, you're gonna have to take the sign off of 90 that says Visitor Bureau this way.
Unless we move right down the street.
That's correct, yeah.
Let's see what resources we have in place. So that's the report. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to field.
Okay.
All right.
And then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 10:35. Teresa? Terry?